When you think about it, pleasing a highly critical middle-aged fanbase of fearless keyboard warriors by remaking one of the most significant and beloved video games of all time really seems like an impossibility. Yet, back in 2020, FF7 Remake nearly managed to do it. Most people loved the reimagining of the Midgar section from OG FF7, while the minority either had a few valid nitpicks, didn't like how a remake wasn't exactly the same as OG FF7, or perhaps didn't like how the eventual 3 separate games worth of quality flashed out content wasn't delivered on one single disc. I guess those people probably stopped watching at A New Hope. But whatever your criticisms may have been, it really feels like Rebirth took a massive step forward in every single way. Rebirth is a must play, but if you're new to the series, don't feel like you have to play the original FF7 first. I do, however, recommend playing Remake before this, as they're directly connected. Before we begin, if you liked this review, it would help me out a lot to sub and hit the like button for more Final Fantasy and JRPG content coming soon. I'd also like to thank the publishers for the review code. What did you think of Rebirth, or do you plan on playing it in the future? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, let's get into it. The epic conclusion to FF7 Remake was not what we expected and has left fans speculating for years. If you're out of the loop, Remake took place in the city of Midgar, which is roughly the first 8 hours of the original game. Rebirth begins right where Remake ended and tells a much larger part of the story that spans most of the world. Like in Remake, Rebirth reimagines the major FF7 events, with just about all of them being majorly fleshed out, and this is part of what makes the game so big. Take the grassland swamps for example. In the original, you simply had to ride a chocobo across the swamp, avoiding the Midgar Zolom, and this took about 5 seconds. This time, there is a large swamp area to navigate around, plus brand new story events that make this experience feel so much more epic. Every single time I got to a new point in the game, I was blown away with how these events were dealt with, and this is part of what made Rebirth so hard to put down. But while Rebirth still tells the core story of OG FF7, there are still plenty of WTF moments that will truly make you question where the story is heading. And this is exactly what makes the story so perfect to me. Rebirth also does a really good job in blending light-hearted and fun moments with serious moments full of emotion. At one point of the game, I was overwhelmed with joy experiencing the Gold Saucer and Chocobo racing for the first time, only to be hit in the feels 30 minutes later after witnessing the retelling of the Barrett and Diane event in Corel. The reimagining of this entire event also gave me a much greater understanding of how Barrett turned out the way that he did, and I am all for it. In fact, Rebirth gave me a much greater appreciation of the entire cast through these new events and dialogue, and through the outstanding voice acting. I also feel totally different towards characters like Yuffie and Kate Sith, who I never really cared for in the past. Yuffie, for instance, is just so quirky, with non-stop entertaining dialogue, and the little songs that she sings to herself at different points in the game always put a smile on my face.
Chocobo, chocobo, I'm on a chocobo, you're on a chocobo.
OG FF7 has meant so much to me for so many years, and I could not be happier with the direction this remake trilogy has taken in Rebirth. It is truly something special. Now it's time to talk about the world and exploration, which is clearly the biggest step up from Remake. I remember playing FF7, 8 and 9 and being absolutely blown away with the world map and the feeling of freedom that we were given in its exploration. There were loads of secrets hidden throughout these expansive worlds, and this level of exploration and discovery just hasn't been the same since. Rebirth doesn't simply recapture the magic scene in these 3 games, but it absolutely blows them away. Now, Rebirth isn't completely open world in the sense that you can explore everywhere from the get-go. Instead, we have several large regions that are all linked together and unlocked as the story is progressed. This gives us the perfect mix of both freedom and linear storytelling, and if it were up to me, this is how I would like all my FF games to be moving forward. Each of these regions look absolutely stunning appealing too, with no two areas looking or feeling the same. The Grasslands area, for example, is full of open fields and lush grass as far as the eye can see. Contrast this with the Junon region, which is stylized with loads of shipwrecks and junk with more of an aquatic focus. And this is also a great time to mention how every moment of Rebirth is heightened by its outstanding soundtrack. Whether you're running through these expansive open regions or fighting an epic boss battle, the music did not disappoint. I listened to the remake soundtrack for weeks after its release, and I'm going to do the exact same with Rebirth. One of the major things that makes Rebirth's exploration so good is that there is so much to do. Contrast this with Final Fantasy XVI, which was also beautiful but had next to nothing to discover. Each region has its own set of objectives to complete, which offer various rewards. These include a range of unique enemies to take on, life springs which reveal lore about the area, proto-relic locations that have their own regional quest lines, Remna Wave towers that provide more intel around the map, chocobo stops that act as rest spots, sanctuaries which are linked to obtaining summon materia, and finally a load of hidden treasure chests and buried chocobo treasures to sniff out. Completing all regional objectives will take a good chunk of time, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Something I loved is that these map markers are not immediately present on the map. You'll need to traverse around the place, often following clues to reach these spots, such as following these cute baby chocobos to rest stops. And yes, you can pet the baby chocobos. Traversing these giant maps can be done on foot, by chocobo, or by some other area-specific mode of transport. Some of these regions even have their own types of chocobo that you'll need to capture first, and these provide a unique way to traverse the area, such as the black chocobo, which can climb up specific mountain faces. I do, however, kinda miss the old-fashioned way of catching and breeding different types of chocobos, but hey, at least you can unlock different equipment for them. So yeah, the world exploration is top tier, and this quality also extends to the towns and the cities, and wowee, they are huge, full of life and highly detailed. In the OG FF7, we may have entered the city, talked to a few people, then left, never to return. Now, there is a load of things to do, including minigames and side quests, which are both a lot of fun and very rewarding. It's also worth mentioning that you can return to a previous region, regardless of where you are in the game, and this takes the pressure off immediately having to complete everything. Wait, what's that? Did you just say minigames? I know that some people love them and some people hate them. The team over at Hellfire RPGs, which is just me, simply cannot get enough of taking a break from saving the world to indulge in a good minigame. In fact, this is one of the things that really drew me into the genre during the golden age of RPGs in the 90s. These days, however, outside of the Like a Dragon series, there doesn't seem to be much of a focus in this area, aside from the occasional RPG card game or fishing minigame. Rebirth, however, went all out with nearly 20 unique minigames for you to sink your teeth into, most of which have very worthwhile rewards. These minigames range from playing piano to Rocket League with Red 13 to a revamped Fort Condor. On that note, f*** you Fort Condor. I barely scraped through the required missions, then old Chadley tells me that a hard mode had been unlocked. This is something that no one in their right mind should attempt. Mechanically, some of these games are fairly simple, such as the frog jumping minigame, but others consumed hours of my life, like Chocobo Racing, which features different chocobos, equipment, and loads of courses. But it's the Queen's Blood card game that really takes the cake. Building unique decks with different playstyles, taking on everyone I could, and progressing through its own unique story was always on the top of my priority list. Triple Triad will always hold a special place in my heart, but Queen's Blood, it's definitely up there. Could Rebirth be the best RPG of all time in terms of minigames? Yeah, it probably is. When I wasn't exploring the massive world or zooming around on my dolphin, I was probably murdering monsters. Now, I absolutely loved the combat system in FF7 Remake, and Rebirth manages to take it to the next level. Just like in Remake, it's all about building up your ATB gauge with regular attacks, then using your ATB charges to unleash abilities or cast spells. The major new feature this time around is synergy skills and synergy abilities, and this allows your party members to team up with one another for unique attacks. This means that the arsenal of options that you have in battle will change depending on who's in your party at the time. Cloud's bullet batter, for instance, has him deflect Barrett's bullets into the enemy for minor long-range physical damage, while Tifa's Heavenly Ascent sees Aerith or Barrett launch her into the air, allowing for aerial combat. Speaking of which, aerial combat has seen some big improvements too, with many characters able to stay in the air for extended periods of time. There's also the option of setting 4 different abilities as shortcuts when the characters are in the air. Next we have synergy abilities, which can be performed when 2 characters have charged enough synergy points through using their regular abilities. These hit hard, and like limit breaks, do not consume an ATB charge. They also add a major benefit, such as splitting your ATB gauge into 3 or leveling up your limit break. Each of the 7 different characters have completely different playstyles, and I was constantly switching between them to try out new synergies and strategies in battle. There are also many occasions where there will be defined characters in your party, often not including Cloud, and I really loved this. Long story short, if you enjoyed the combat in Remake, I am very confident you'll love Rebirth's combat. The battle system is one of my favourites of all time. Something else that has taken a huge leap forward from Remake is the RPG upgrade mechanics. Starting with materia, there is a way bigger variety this time around, with more leveling possibilities and combinations, so naturally, the possible character builds are also much greater. To add to this, you can also set weapon skills for each character to further customize your playstyle. New to Rebirth is character folios, and these are basically like skill trees. The cores in these trees include stat boosts, synergy skills, and abilities to use in battle. These cores can be unlocked by spending SP gained from leveling up, and by finding character-specific manuscripts, usually by completing the game's optional content. Another new addition is item transmutation, which allows you to combine all of the materials that you find into new items or equipment. If you're not a fan of crafting, then fear not. This system is simple, and I found just about all of the required materials naturally while exploring and fighting enemies. One thing that I really loved about these character upgrade mechanics is that a lot of it is directly linked to exploring the map and other optional content, and this makes exploring never feel pointless. If you're willing to put in the hours, which you probably will because nothing feels like a chore, then you'll have the tools to create a behemoth of a team. As you've probably gathered by now, I absolutely love FF7 Rebirth, and I think it's just about as close to being a perfect game than anything else out there. But I'm a reviewer, so I've got to pick out some things that didn't work so well, and I do have a few to mention, even if they're only very minor. Firstly is when your controller runs out of batteries. I had some long sessions in Rebirth, and it is inexcusable for a game not to pause itself mid-battle when your battery goes flat. Some of the minigames and combat challenges are also insanely difficult, like the 3D brawler. I rage quit after Shiva kicked my ass about 1,000,000 times. On that note, you are forced to play many of the minigames to progress the story. I personally found this a lot of fun, but I know others might not like this. And without spoiling anything, there's a certain change that takes place regarding one of the main characters. I was not a fan of this direction. And then there's Rebirth's brand new animal species, the albino koala. What's going on with this design? But to be honest, these are all minor nitpicks for me and hardly impacted my enjoyment of the game. It didn't take me long at all to fall in love with FF7 Remake back in 2020, and I felt like I've been waiting forever to find out what would happen next. But this wait was absolutely worth it. The next chapter in Cloud's story is even more epic than the first in every way imaginable. If Remake was a pre-season, then Rebirth is a freaking Super Bowl, and this makes me so excited to see what's in store for the next and final game in the trilogy. Rebirth looks and sounds amazing. The gorgeous visuals, the top tier voice acting, and the incredible soundtrack is up there with the best. But the one thing I was most excited to see was how the story would progress, and it did not disappoint. Just about every key event of the original FF7 has been greatly expanded on, blowing my mind every step of the way. But there was also plenty of surprises, and I have absolutely no idea how this trilogy is going to conclude. Rebirth's combat has also seen some significant improvements. With the addition of synergy skills and abilities, it is now easily one of my favourite battle systems of all time. And where Remake felt very linear and confined, Rebirth feels the exact opposite, with many huge open regions full of a plethora of things to discover. There is just so much to do every step of the way, and 100%ing this game will take in excess of 100 hours. Then there's the minigames. There are so many of them, and the majority are thoroughly enjoyable. Rebirth went all out in this area. I've been reviewing games on this channel for nearly 10 years now and haven't given a game 100% yet. Ladies and gentlemen, and albino koalas, here we have it, my first 100. FF7 Rebirth is one of the best games ever made, and if you're into the genre, there is absolutely no reason to pass on this one. What did you think of Rebirth? Do you agree with what I said? Let me know in the comments below. This was Hellfire RPGs, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, it would help me out a lot to hit that like button and sub for more RPG content coming soon. You can also hit that super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. See you next time.